Hello guys and gals, and welcome. So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting rune word, one that maybe you guys have seen before. It's a very cheap rune word, it's a very effective rune word, and quite honestly, it's a very good rune word. So without further ado, let's go over the different stats of Spirit. Now, Spirit is an interesting rune word because it can be put in both swords and shields. And keep this in mind because it is specifically swords. You can't put this in a flail or an axe or whatever it is. You cannot put this in anything other than a sword or a shield. Now, the effects of this particular rune word do vary depending on the item that you put the rune word in, and I'd like to take you over to the website and we'll look at those variables. Now, I think it's because specifically that Spirit is such a cheap recipe to make. It has rather large variables, and we're going to talk about those variables today. So let me make sure I'm out of the way here. So we have quite a few variables on this. The sword form is +2 to all skills, which is definitely nice to have, and that is static. The faster cast, which is one of the more sought after functions, is 25 to 35%. So a 35% would be a perfect Spirit if with that particular regard. It has 55% faster hit recovery, which is absolutely amazing. Hit recovery is great to have on any character who is going to be, teleporting around, trying to get through stuff, fighting in melee combat. Heck, even if you don't go into melee combat, when you finally do get hit by something, you want to be able to get away, and faster hit recovery helps you do that. Next on the list is 1 to 50 lightning damage, which is not really going to apply to most people who use this shield, because most people that are using this shield are caster types, which is why the faster cast rate. We also have 3 to 14 cold damage, which again doesn't really apply. 75 poison damage, which again doesn't really apply. I mean, if you are a melee character who is using this shield or sword, I suppose that would come in handy for you, but trust me when I say it's probably not going to do you very much. 7% life stolen per hit, which again is for a melee. 250 defense versus missiles, which while nobody really particularly cares about defense versus missile, nobody's going to take an amulet that has defense versus missile and put it on specifically, for that effect. But since it's there, and it's going to help you out a little bit versus those fire archers, it's definitely nice. 22 to vitality, 89 to 112 to mana, so a pretty big variable there on the plus to mana, and then 3 to 8 magic absorb. And I'd like to take a minute and take a look at magic absorb, because I feel like magic absorption is kind of looked down on, one of the effects on Spirit, and it actually is a very, very awesome effect. Now, we're going to go straight to Magic Absorb. Absorb Magic works against all types of non-physical damage. Alright? So keep this in mind when you're thinking about this Magic Absorb on the Spirit, and you're like, oh, it rolled 1 Magic Absorb or whatever. It's a lot, because Absorption follows the calculation here. Absorption is calculated for elemental damage. It calculates your resistance first. It removes the percentage absorption, if any, and then it removes the hit point absorption, if any. So, for instance, if you were rolled a maximum on this shield, which is 8, you would remove 8 damage from any elemental attack that comes in. And then you would heal for that same amount, which would be 16. So you could effectively remove 8 cold, 8 fire, 8 lightning, 8. I think it even works against magic damage, which is the like bone spear and the hammers. And then it heals you for the same amount, so you end up with another 8 to your hit point pool, which is 16. So you get a 16-point absorption versus every attack that comes in after your resistance is calculated. So if we look at that on a calculator just really quick to give you an idea of what that means. Let's say, for instance, a monster hits you for 1,000 damage, and you have 90% resistance in that category. So we're going to remove 90% of that right away. What's left over is 100 damage, and then we're going to remove 8 from that because you've absorbed it. So it's only doing 92, and then we're going to heal you for 8 as well. And that is going to bring it down to 84. So instead of taking 100 damage, you're only going to take 84. And the really beautiful thing about Magic Absorb is, say, for instance, you had 95% resistance. So if I was taking 1,000 damage with 95% resistance, I would only be taking 50, and then minus that 18 is going to bring me down to 42, and it's going to make it really, really sweet for me because I'm not going to be taking hardly any damage at all. The resistance is great because it brings the total amount down, and then the absorption is great too because that is stacking up. And absorption is going to stack with other effects, like for instance if you're running a Ravenfrost, or if you're running a Dwarf Star, or things like that. Those effects are going to stack with the absorption on the spirit. And that does roll between 3 to 8. So having if you had a 35% faster cast with 8 magic absorb, that would be absolutely amazing. Now, of course, it rolls differently for the shield, and we have to take a look at the shield's variables as well. So the shield rolls +2 to all skills as well, with the same faster cast, the same hit recovery, and the same defense. The difference here between the shield and the sword mainly is that the runes that are used to create it, which is the lightning rune, the cold rune, and the poison rune, will roll resistances in a shield instead of damage. So the cold resistance, the lightning resistance, and the poison resistance coming from those particular runes actually works in a shield. Whereas when you put those same runes in a sword, they give you, lightning, fire, and lightning, cold, and poison damage, which is not what you want. Now, it is missing a resistance here. Obviously, you don't get fire. Fire resistance is not being applied on the shield, and it is kind of a bummer. So when you're making a spirit shield, a lot of the times people will look for a paladin shield if they're making it for a paladin that already has resistances on it. So for instance, if you were to come across a 45 all-res paladin shield with 4 sockets, you could add that to the 35. So you would be looking at 45, 55, 65, 75, 80. So you'd be looking at 80 res in the 3 categories and only 45 in fire, which is very interesting. And with the sword, of course, you get no resistances, but these two can be stacked together for the 35% and 35% if you were able to get dual cast. And why would you use the spirit shield on a paladin? Well, mainly for hammers. So if you are a Hammerdin who has the casting capability and you want to cast as fast as humanly possible, you're going to want that extra casting speed. Now, granted, if I take off the spirits, I'm going to go much, much slower. Insanely slower, because I don't even have enough mana to cast 1 hammer. That's amazing. Now, obviously, you can make Spirit in a different shield other than a Paladin shield. You can make it in a Monarch, which is one of the main choices. So that this is a Monarch with 156 strength. The reason why people use the Monarch shield is because it is the highest defense shield in Hell difficulty with the lowest strength requirement that is capable of 4 sockets. So there are lower strength shields in Hell difficulty, but they do not have the ability to use 4 sockets. So keep that in mind. And Spirit is absolutely an amazing rune word because, number one, it is extremely low level with a maximum level of 25. And it is very, 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 very nice to have as a caster type. So if you are, for instance, a paladin who casts, if you are a bone necromancer who is using his bone spear or poison nova, it would help you with the casting speed on those particular abilities. If you were a hurricane druid who was casting tornadoes, or trying to get all the variables here, because there are so many different characters who rely on casting speed, and having that extra casting speed is definitely nice. Now, obviously, there are some characters who don't, like for instance, Assassin, when they are laying traps, uses attack speed, not casting speed. If you were a melee paladin, you wouldn't need casting speed. There are other rune words which may be better for you than a spirit, specifically because spirit doesn't really offer you very much besides +2 to all skills, if that is the only thing that you are using. Most people are using that +2 to all skills and the faster cast, not just the +2 to all skills. They specifically want that 35%, and a lot of people will actually re-roll the spirits over and over again until they get the 35%, because it's such an easy rune word to re-roll. Tal, Thul, Ort, and Am are easy to come by. You will get Tal and Ort just simply from the Ancient's Pledge quest. And then Thul and Am are pretty easy to come by as well. In fact, I've got so many Ams in my chest right now, I need to drop them on the ground or something. Or maybe I'll just use them to re-roll a bunch of spirits until I can get some perfect ones. But keep in mind that this recipe is extremely easy, extremely good for low-level characters. It does not need to be in an actual real weapon that has real stats. It does not need to be in a real shield that has real stats. If you are a low-level character and you don't have any strength and you don't have any dex, you can just find the lowest sword that you can possibly find, like a broadsword or a crystal sword, and you can just put the recipe in that. And same thing with the shield. You can just find any 4-socket shield that you can, whatever the lowest 4-socket shield is, and you can put it in that. And then when you level up higher to a much higher level character, you can find a much higher level base, like a Monarch shield or a Vortex shield or something along those lines, and you can make the spirit in that and have a much higher version. Now, most characters are not going to put a higher version of the sword, but the shield is definitely a one that you want, because higher level shields have a better block chance. They also have much higher defense, and if you're a paladin, when you get into the higher tiers, you're going to look for those 45 all-res shields. So it's definitely going to be nice to come across a 45 all-res shield to put your spirit in if you're specifically going to be a caster type. Now, these shields can be used by non-caster types because of the ease of the recipe, like I said earlier. Having such an easy-to-make recipe definitely makes it something that you can just slap in a shield for no reason. You know, really early level, a lot of people just use Ral or Tal, which is Ancient's Pledge, which has very nice resistances. But later on, you may consider putting TalThulOrtAmn in a 4-socket shield, if you can find one, just for the +2 to all skills. And semi-decent resistances. I mean, 35 to 3 res is definitely better than 0%. And it's not going to get you very far. I mean, this is normal difficulty, and as you can see, 35 to all res isn't really doing very much for me. And when I get to hell difficulty, that's really not going to be a lot. So you're, even with the resistances on this shield, you're still going to have to find another way to build resistances, especially since you are using a spirit sword, which has absolutely no resistances on it, along with the shield, which is missing the fire resistance. So you're going to have to accommodate for that as well. But I think that when you run dual spirits, what you're getting is the +4 to all skills. If you manage to roll perfect spirits, you're getting 70% to your cast rate, which is really a lot. You're getting 110% to your faster hit recovery, which is a lot of faster hit recovery. Definitely great for a melee character if you just wanted to run it for the faster hit recovery. And then you get a decent amount of vitality between the two, so you get 44 to vitality. The mana is definitely nice to have as well. So between the two, you're looking at almost 200 to mana. As you can see, I have 14 mana, and when I put on the Spirit Shield and the Spirit Sword, I'm now at 214. So the plus to mana is definitely nice. The magic absorb, like I was talking about earlier, is really sweet, and it's a lot cooler than I think a lot of people give credit for when it comes to Spirit. And it's really sad when you see a really nice Spirit with only 3 magic absorb on it, because that magic absorb is absorbing a rather nice percentage of what would otherwise be maybe, you know, a devastating hit. Because you're talking about not only that you're canceling out a certain portion of the damage, you're also absorbing a certain portion of that damage, and it also combines with other effects like Raven Frost and Dwarf Star, and maybe a Blackthorn's Face or Warmouth Gauntlets, or whatever other absorbing items you have on you at that particular time. It's going to stack up with them and become even more effective. Anyway, I hope you've got an interesting look at Spirit, and I hope that you will make one of these for your caster types. and utilize Spirit to its full potential. Because early level, at level 25, which is when you could make this, Spirit is an absolutely amazing sword, and it's really hard to beat that +2 to all skills, faster cast, faster recovery, and magic absorb. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.